as Darren Curtis says, there's now plenty of room in the executive box these days. On Friday, is it Friday? I don't know. Sometime this week, the club put out a statement that said, on the 19th of September 2025, so it was then, I will be stepping down as chief executive of Plymouth Argyle. That's Andrew Parkinson. After nearly 7 years at Argyle, I feel now is the right time to move on. When I took this role, my aim was to help the club progress on and off the pitch. And in that time, we've seen sold out attendances, record revenues, and recognition through several industry awards across a number of disciplines. None of this would have been possible without the hard work, passion, and dedication of so many brilliant people at the club. What do you make of Parkinson's tenure at the club overall before we go into specifics?
The feelings I have right now, very similar actually to the feelings I had when Neil Jewson departed just after the Rooney hire. This had to happen. I think it's something that now this one I do know was on the deadline day stream. And I mentioned that the chief executive who's overseen this cannot survive in his role, and he couldn't. This had to happen, and I'm glad it has. With that being said, now that has happened, now we don't need to be putting any pressure on to see something that needs to occur. I think we can take a moment to appreciate that there was a lot of good that took place in his tenure as well. Stuff that's happened off the pitch, the record revenues, as has been mentioned there, the attraction to more supporters is a good thing, and it's something that I think he will like to see, and he will hope is his eventual legacy. And there's a lot that he did in getting money into the club, getting us to have that bigger budget. The fact that we supposedly do have a top six playing budget in this league, whether it's been spent wisely or at all, is another matter. The fact that we have that is to his credit, and to his credit of the amount of work that's happened to bring that money in. It wasn't always, to be honest, in the correct ways. I think for a lot of people, some of the decisions on things like the price of mascot packages and things like that, and the fact that we've got so much hospitality now that feels let's say poor value for money, and one very, very big one on charging PAs for supporters with disabilities to go on coaches, which was a horrendous move that thankfully was reversed, albeit a year too late. For a lot of those, I think it became a situation where people would struggle to forgive those decisions. I think they still struggle to forgive those decisions, and I can understand why. Because I think the divide that was then drawn between the club and between its supporter base was hurt, and in many ways beyond repair. And I think Parkinson going out the door eventually was what needed to happen for that, and many other reasons. I don't want to use victim of his own success, because he had his failings as well. I don't want to gloss over it. I think with the fact that we've got sold out crowds now, with the fact that the club, if not necessarily the team, are doing so much better than when he first arrived, I think it kind of led to a situation when that divide that I was talking about, or the wedge that was driven between the club and the supporters, started to grow a little bit bigger. I just wonder if the fact that we've got sold out grounds, we've got a waiting list for season tickets, there was almost the attitude at the top then of, oh, well, we don't need to worry about alienating a few, because if they go away, someone's going to take their place. We're going to make the same amount of money either way. You compare that, for example, to 2011, 2012, when the team was objectively worse, when the club was in an objectively worse state. That's not something that I want to gloss over either. But those days, why did it feel so much different? It was because the club needed every penny it could. It needed everybody on board. It needed every fan to be able to contribute. And if one fan decided, no, I'm not going to renew, the money for that seat isn't coming in. So I just feel like that was an attitude that took over at the club, particularly in the second half of Parkinson's reign, where he knew he could bank on sold out grounds. He knew that he could make decisions that were, let's say, unpopular, and he wouldn't suffer too much on the bottom line for it. And the position eventually became just completely untenable of how this transfer window was managed, and whether this was, as a case of the long-mentioned review into how recruitment was done over the summer, has led to him resigning from his role before he was pushed. It wouldn't surprise me, but this was a long time coming. He did fantastic work in the first half of his reign. I don't think it's unfair to bring that up for a moment and say, yes, he has done well, but he needed to go, and I'm glad he has.
Yeah, it's very rare that I disagree with you anyway, Adam, but I think you've summed it up pretty well there. Sam, anything you want to add?
Honestly, I think Adam genuinely covered everything. Very competent, very capable football administrator for not even just the first half, probably the first 3 quarters of his tenure overall. I think he absolutely had to go, no question of it, because of the shambles that's been overseen, and the buck stops at the top, right? And obviously you can't sack the owner, can you? The owner is the one who owns the club. He can't sack himself. So the one who was actually at the very top, who's ran the club, was the chief executive officer, who I think absolutely had to go, not just for this particular transfer window, but I think also the past 18 months with the great number of things that have gone wrong. But yeah, it's now worth saying he did obviously do a lot of good. He did generate huge increases of revenue, obviously oversaw Fulston Park, oversaw the rise from League Two to the Championship with great effect. And obviously, yeah, there does have to be a great deal of credit for that. And I think, like Adam said, it's kind of the exact same scenario of Q-Slip, whereby he did a great job for a time, but I think now I don't want to say outspent his welcome, but I think that sounds a bit harsh, but effectively it's that he just became a time where the job he was doing wasn't in any way equivalent to the job he previously started doing, and therefore the change had to be made. What I will say, where I am a little bit worried, not even who we got in next. Who's doing it now? Who's doing it today? It's a very important job. And I think, to be fair,
obviously there's news that's come out as well, isn't there, Sam? That Stuart Webber, who was Hallett has named as well, was previously helping us through Brondby and Partners, has obviously now joined
part of the Red Bull football empire over in Japan. So yeah, I guess
it's going to be a clean slate for whoever does come in, isn't it? Like
it is. Yeah. I think in terms of Stuart Webber, it was always a bit of an odd one because he never was actually officially employed by the club. He was obviously a consultant with the club. He was de facto director of football, wasn't he? For the sense that we didn't have one, and then obviously still don't have one really. Obviously, we have Fox, the head of football operations, which I think Fox now seems to be de facto director of football in all but name. It's kind of what I'm getting. But Webber obviously oversaw that gap between Q-Slip and Fox, and also worked alongside Fox for, I think, probably the first 3 or 4 months of Fox's tenure before he himself left. So yeah, that's another one out the door. So yeah, I am concerned about who next, because spoiler alert, our track record of appointments isn't great in a lot of areas lately. So I am a little bit concerned about who next, but I'm also concerned about who's doing it now, because it's obviously a very important job. I assume somebody is doing it on an interim basis, and we've just not yet had that announced to us, because obviously that was the case with Webber. He was being the interim director of football for about 4 or 5 months before we actually got any kind of official confirmation of that by the club. So I guess this is similar. I guess somebody is doing it and it's not been announced. If I was a betting man, I'd say probably Paul Byrne. That's not inside knowledge. It's just a guess based on the fact that he was the one they got to do the fan forum. He seems like a very smart guy. He seems like he's very on the ball, very involved. So I guess it's probably him. I don't know that. Yeah. Good luck to whoever it is.
It's a guess rather than a myth or legend then.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so obviously we're hearing a strong counter view coming up in the comments from someone called Philip Bayless. He's very passionate in his defence. He's saying that I am a disgrace and I should be ashamed of myself, Philip, for what I said on PAFC's YouTube channel after the Orient game. To which all I can say, Philip, is that if you've never made a comment post-game in the heat of the moment, then you're a better man than me and you're a calmer man than me. And despite that, what I will say is that whilst I think that the tone and the aggression with which I said it was probably not my finest hour, and I was a little bit passionate, I think the actual content of it was correct, and the content was basically amounted to he has to go. And I think clearly, as he said himself, it's time for me to go. Either he himself agrees with me, or at the very least, Simon Hallett agrees with me. So maybe I did go a bit too far, and I apologise for that, but I think the content of it was clearly not wrong, Philip. So yeah, there we go.